because he did a lot of really great things. He never put himself in the act, ever. He'd usually diminish it a little bit, not modeling, but he'd say, "Oh hell." And he did some, he had I'm sure you've heard about him having that helicopter accident up there, and I guess I don't know what happened. I think the tail rotor malfunctioned, and so the airplane around, and he did a hard landing, and he was pretty well banged up. But he walked, I don't know how far it was, until someone noticing this film. But that's typical of John. And he never made a big deal of it, never talked about it.
I've talked to several people. He said that he never talked about the crashes. And
No, never, no.
Never complained.
Never. No.
Now he liked to have a good time.
Oh, yes. He did. He enjoyed up the Bohemian Grove, where I'm a member also of John, and he would stay out. He liked to visit the camps, He just liked to be around people. And always he'd say, "Well, Tom, we better stop at one more camp." By then it would be midnight or almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm ready for bed, but John is still. But it's very social. It's social in a good sense. He liked he liked people.
Now, people outside of aviation, a lot of people never heard of John Myers, but if you're in aviation, you've heard of John.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you don't know him, heard about him, you probably have. Well, maybe somebody who's just 5 years or something like that, had no reason. Although even then you'd hear talk about him.
People, the young pilots would look up to him?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They say a person's character comes out a lot more during the tough times of life versus easygoing times.
Yes.
Can you talk about the character of John Myers?
He had a. That's one of the things I guess I liked and appreciated. John had character. He really had character, and you really knew how he was going to act or react. I don't know anybody I'd rather be with if I was in a tough situation than John Myers.
Some pilots and young people I've talked to that have met him and asked him for advice, and he would just say, "Go for it," or
something like that. That would be John Myers, because he knew that every individual had his own ability, and I don't think he would tell. I don't think he would give advice. He'd say, "Go for it. Have fun." That's what he'd say.
Now, he had some nicknames over the years. People said that he called himself Skinhead.
Skinhead. Oh yes, he used that. Yeah, that's right. That's typical of Johnny Myers. He puts people at ease.
So he made jokes about himself in a way.
Yeah, depreciating himself. But he doesn't do it in a modeling way. Some people become modeling that way, running themselves down. But John never did. He was very proud of himself, but it never came out. It was just by his demeanor.
They say that he had a quiet strength about him and charisma, in a way.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, he did, very much so. You knew this was a real man. And I know in some cases where people did some bad things, he would be nice to them, but it's very clear he would never support them publicly. He had his sense of right and wrong. He just would grow quiet. That's when I knew that. I heard one of the guys, maybe it was Clay Lacey, said that he said, "Watch out for that guy." You should.
How do you think John Myers is going to be remembered?
I know that anybody that knew him as well as I knew him, and he knew an awful lot of people as well as I knew him. They'd all say the same thing. A real gentleman, a lot of fun, serious in a fun way. He enjoyed everything he did. If he didn't enjoy it, he wouldn't do it. Kind of simple.
Now, your generation and his generation have been called the greatest generation.
Well, that's what you, yeah, and then the next one coming up would call themselves that too, I'm sure.
But John Myers lived during that early stages of aviation and
Right.
saw changes and helped change things. Is that
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and so even in the end, now did he, the helicopter thing, he really liked flying helicopters.
Well, I don't know whether I liked them. He flew them. I personally have never liked helicopters too much. They're just unnatural to me.
And did he ever talk to you about the old days about the flying wing?
Oh, yeah.
That was a big deal, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, Jack Northrop, that was his thought. And Jack Northrop was absolutely right about it. That he thought the flying wing was a much simpler way to go through the air than having a wing and then a fuselage and then a tail. And you have to have that tail to keep the airplane stable. He always felt that you could, through artificial stability, that would be today we use gyroscopes. Without a doubt, it's the most efficient structurally and aerodynamically, a flying wing.
Now, test pilots, these guys who are test pilots, can you tell us what makes up they're pretty courageous type people, aren't they?
Well, they had better be, because at the time you get into, well, and you've heard that story, even flying a commercial airplane is hours, months, and even years of boredom, punctuated by 10 seconds of total, well, like the guy that landed the airplane in the Hudson River.
Sully, yeah, that was something.
Yeah, but it's a good example. See, a really good a good pilot is that way. They're calm.
Being a test pilot is part science and art in a way, isn't it?
Oh, sure, a lot of skill. It's just like a good basketball player. If you've got the skills, then if you have the character to manage those skills, then you got the combination. That's a test pilot.
Now, some people have said that John Myers was a handshake type of a guy.
Yes, very much so.
And
I trust him totally.
He was really transparent that way.
Yes, he was.
Do you think what would he think about us making a movie about him?
What the hell are you doing that for? But if you want to, go ahead. I think he'd say something like that. He would not be certainly pushing for it. No.
Can you think of any special moments that you had with John Myers? Any proud moments?
Well, many of them. No, I can't. No. It's a collection of thing that describes your feeling about somebody.
You knew him for 50 years, a long time.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Not too many people these days say they have friends for 50 years.
No, and we did, and John and I were friends. And we neither one of us wear it on our sleeve. You know what I mean? Like, he's my friend. I never say that.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about it.
I hope it's useful to you. Because he was a great person, truly. A great human being, courageous, a lot of integrity, but he had control of himself.
Now, towards the end, he was philanthropic as well, so he was a giver.
Oh, yeah.
He's always a giver, in a way.
Yes, he was.
And in your memory, you remember him flying with Gus. Is that the way you remember John Myers?
Yes. I can just see him up there, the dog, and yes.
That's a good memory.
That is a good memory. And I think he would like that too.